Hello everyone and welcome to this Roblox event. Today I will be going over the reasons for using Roblox and I'll be interviewing SplitYourGamming10, who's a Roblox developer on the platform. And what I'm going to do today is ask him many different questions, sort of why he wants to use Roblox, the reasons, and sort of many different things. And anyone who's watching this live will be able to ask any questions. And yeah, so what I'm going to do now is pass over to Split Your Gaming, and he's going to talk about sort of what he does on the platform and why he does it.
I hope you can all hear me. So for me, I use Roblox for kind of a variety of different reasons. Obviously, the main one being to make games. It's kind of the main purpose of the platform and everything. But there's kind of so much more to the platform when you actually do develop it, because it's a lot more powerful than what you kind of, I guess, would use when you're younger, perhaps. Like you play a game like Minecraft, for example, and while you do have some freedom to do stuff, you're still heavily restricted. But with Roblox, there's so much more available to you to use. And I really like that freedom to kind of build whatever you can kind of think of. It's great.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with you. It is such a great tool for people to use. So what I'm going to do is ask you a few questions and then just answer them however you would like. And yeah, if we go from there, if anyone's in the chat, feel free to ask any questions. We will definitely cover anything you may have. So the first question I have is, what attracted you to using Roblox initially?
That's a very good question. It's actually quite a while ago that I started using Roblox, and it was actually yourself that got me into using it, because I can remember. Um, I remember you showing me something very kind of basic kind of a few years ago now. And I believe, if I can remember correctly, it was actually fireworks. I think at the time, you, even yourself, you weren't that kind of experienced with the actual developing side of the platform, and you found this out for yourself and been using it, and you showed it to me, and I was like, oh my god, there's so much you can do. Like, even this just simple thing requires you to program it, but it's not like place a block in and it does it all for you. You actually have to sit there and program every little bit yourself. And I really liked that ability to do what you want. It's like I said a minute ago, it's the freedom to actually create something of your imagination.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you mentioned, I think it was sort of developing fireworks and getting to know the platform. But even then, I knew very little about Roblox. And I think since then, both of us have learned so many different things
Oh
with
yeah,
it,
definitely.
really. Yeah. Okay, so my next question is, how has Roblox improved to help you develop your game making skills? So, like, what features have they added and things like that?
I mean, there's been loads. I couldn't even sit here and list them all. There's been loads of stuff added. Um, I can remember one of the main things that were added was things like proximity prompts, which really kind of revolutionized game development, because it was such an easy tool to create client server interactions and make, as a developer, it made your life a lot easier. And it was just kind of, that was just one of the many things that kind of got added that were really unique to the game and really helpful for developers. It's just so many things have been added since both of us started, and they've all been, I'd say probably 95% of them have been really positive changes, and I think probably majority of them we have used at some point or another.
Yeah, definitely. There's been loads of like different features, and all of them have been helpful at some point. And the proximity prompts, I think we've used the most.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
it's like literally you can use it for anything. Like we could use it for a ride or open doors or pretty much anything. You have so much freedom with it. Which when it first came out, it looked like it was only for one set thing. But yeah, it sort of opened up to many different things.
Mm.
Okay, so my next question is what challenges have you faced being a game developer? Like, what bugs have you had, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, the list is endless, literally. Um, I mean, I can take Movie World as a good example.
Go for it.
Um, so even just making things for that, like with our data system that we have, I won't go too in depth into it, but the amount of bugs that I encountered making that, and the amount of times I had to rewrite code and rewrite it again and rewrite it again just to make potentially even one simple thing work. But that's kind of one of the things that you um I guess you have to expect those sort of things when you're building or programming anything. You have to expect these bugs, and it really is just a case of trial and error with any of it. It really is.
Yeah, it's like there's been many different issues I think you've had, I've had. It just makes it you have to stop and really think about how do I overcome this issue or what was causing it in
Yeah.
the first place.
I
But
think one of my most common ways of overcoming bugs was leaving it for a couple of days and coming back to it on a fresh mind.
yep,
That definitely helps a lot.
it's always the typical way, and it always works. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You always see something that you didn't previously see.
yeah. Okay. So my next question is sort of an off-topic question about not really game developing, but it's how do you think Roblox could be used as a tool for education? So some examples of what it could be used for, how it could be beneficial.
Well, I mean, I know Roblox have a whole education website just to show off what you can actually do, but like from my perspective, it's a really valuable tool for expressing your imagination. Um, and you can really like you could go into like a school of say young teenagers and none of them could know anything about game development in the slightest, and you could put Roblox in front of them and give them, say, a half an hour lesson on how to use it in a basic sense. And by the end of that half an hour lesson, I can guarantee you they'd be able to make at least something decent. So maybe like a very basic house, for example, because at the end of the day, it's just parts that you place, resize, and move to where you want them. So obviously, there's a lot more to it than that when you go more in depth. But from an education point of view, you can really like start with the basics, and it's really good for people that want to learn how to get into game development because it shows them the almost like a more simplified version with a really good transition into the more complex stuff all within the one platform, and I really like that.
Yeah, I suppose so. There's many different things it could be used for, as you mentioned, but it's like many people just think, oh, Roblox is a video game platform and that's all it's designed for. But in some ways, if you could use it for more educational things, like the programming part, it could be really beneficial to many different people.
Yeah, yeah. When you get people that are like, "Oh, you play Roblox," and they really they think it's just like a kids' game, and at the end of the day, a lot of the games that are actually on the platform might be targeted more towards the younger audience because it's where the money comes from. But when you actually sit behind and make those games, there's a lot more to it than what most people realise.
Yeah, because sort of as you mentioned, younger games could get more money, but at the end of the day, making games aren't for the money. If you enjoy making games, if you enjoy doing things on the Roblox platform, it's definitely a good place to be. And I do recommend anyone, if they're thinking about starting studios, just try it. Like, there's no wrong way or right way to do Roblox Studio. You can do anything you want and be as creative as you want to be. But that sort of leads on to my next question. So, do you have any advice for those interested in making Roblox games?
Um, no, I would learn the programming language Lua a little bit before you start because it's really helpful. Even if you only want to do sort of basic stuff, it's really good to kind of learn how the language works a bit. Um, just so that you have that understanding if you do want to create something simple. And then I'd also suggest be very familiar with the developer documentation because it is a lifesaver. Like if you don't know how to use something, you can look on there, and a lot of the time it will have basic examples of stuff. And it's really, really good because you can sit there, try it, and think, right, well, this is how this works. How can I make this my own? And then you can tweak things around and play with it to get the output that you want. And from that, you learn actually how to do things. So when you're using like a feature, say like a particle emitter, you sit there and you tinker with the settings, and like changing one setting might completely change how it looks, like it might completely change the direction it's going or whatever. But it's from that little bits of tinkering that you learn, right, this is what this does, this is what that does. And you do that with multiple different things, and you learn through trial and error. Same with programming, actually how everything works.
Yeah, definitely. So, like the Dev Forum and all of these sort of places on Roblox is really helpful because many people sort of don't think or they sort of wonder where I can get different resources from. And yeah, it's definitely a good place to do it on. Um, so moving on to my next question, it's going to be I know I got you into sort of Roblox itself, but what got you into the actual game making part? So what sort of inspired you to think, oh, I want to start making physical games on Roblox?
That's a good question. I think once you'd kind of showed me that basic firework example, um, I think I kind of took that in my own sense, put that on my own sort of game, and just sort of like try to understand how everything works. And I was like, this could be the start of something really, really good. And if I sit here and play around with this over time, I'm going to learn more and more. And I'm still learning stuff to this day. There's stuff that I don't know how to do on the platform, and I look it up and I'm like, oh, that's how you do it. But it really was that initial um you showing me what the platform what it is and what you can do with it, and me looking at it thinking you can actually do so much with this because it's not just block programming or very limited restricted programming. You actually have the freedom to do a lot, so you can really express your imagination to as much as you want.
Yeah, so yeah, the fireworks is like a really good example because one of the main things both of us did was program like our own mini fireworks show. And within that, it sort of allowed us to develop how to use particle emitters, how to programming lure you, because neither of us really knew anything about programming, and we sort of developed our skills from there to gain so much more. So, moving on from that question, my next question to you is going to be what projects are you most proud of creating? So, out of everything you've done on Roblox Studio, what do you think is your best creation?
um that's a good question because I've made so many little random things here and there, and every single one I've been very proud of. But if it's going to be anything, it probably would be some of the stuff that I've made on Movie World, because some of it is so complex, I guess. Um, it's it's kind of like this has taken me weeks to make, and then when the moment that it fully works without any issues, it's like, oh my god, I've actually done it. It's great. And there's been quite a few moments like that on Movie World because it is at the end of the day, it's our biggest game. Everything else that I've made in the past has either not been released or it's just been to play around with, try and understand how things work. But Movie World's that one game where it's like this is out to the public, everything has to work. So the moment that does work, it's really, really good.
Yeah, definitely, because Movie World was sort of. We've worked on lots of different games before, but Movie World is both of our biggest game, and there's so much within it, and people may think, oh, it's just sort of like a basic theme park, for example, but we've learned so much from that. And since we first started the game, we've learned so many more skills. We're starting to put it in other projects and helping people much more, which we wouldn't have been able to do probably if we didn't even start this project of the game.
Mm.
So, my next question is, what are your thoughts on the future of Roblox? So, how do you think it's going to impact gaming and development and sort of like the upcoming changes? Do you think it will improve the platform? And if so, how?
I would hope it improves the platform. I really do. I mean, there's, as we've said earlier, there's lots and lots of new features kind of always coming. But in terms of the game industry in itself, I don't know, because Roblox in itself is a game at the end of the day. It's treated as a game on its own. And then you have all of these other developers um, kind of out there making standalone games, and they do make a lot of profit from it. So you look at a game franchise like Five Nights at Freddy's, it's had God knows how many games in the series, and they've all been so successful. But then you compare it to Roblox, and Roblox as a platform is insanely successful. But then you actually have to look at the individual games within Roblox and think, right, how successful are these compared to the standalone game franchises? And that's where it gets a bit more interesting, because even if you have a popular game within Roblox, it's still classed as being Roblox. So in some respects, the credit almost comes down to Roblox rather than the developers themselves, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with everything you've said because it's sort of they've added loads of good features and many different like big games outside of Roblox. They're all really successful and it's trying to work out how to sort of keep it together. And yeah, okay. So moving on to another question. What are some of your most surprising or unexpected things you've learned within Roblox Studio?
Um, I don't know. It's another one of those questions where I'd actually have to kind of sit and really think about it, because there's so many kind of little moments where that's kind of happened, I guess.
Yeah, that's totally fine because yeah, there are probably many different things if we think about it together. There's bound to be lots of different things. Okay, so in your journey as being a sort of Roblox game developer, have you ever sort of encountered a breakthrough moment where you didn't realize that's how you do something, and because of that, it's totally improved the game and made the game better?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I can't really name any examples, but yeah, I've definitely had that happen to me before. Even like movie wise, again, is a very good example of that. Like I've been making stuff, and then I've looked something up on how to do something. I'm like, oh my god, that's how you do it more like efficiently, or that's how it's like faster, or that's how it looks better. And it's just revolutionary in your own mind almost, because you're like, how have I never known about this before?
Yeah, definitely. There's like many different things. I'll sort of wondered, oh, I wonder how I do that, and then I've found it one day. I was like, oh, is it really that sort of simple? But I thought it was going to be a lot harder than that, and it's sort of you realise after a while, and it's just, oh, I wish I knew that sooner, sort of thing. So, moving on to another question. What do you think sets apart a successful game within the Roblox platform?
Um, it's in my opinion, there's a variety of things. So the first one is the design. How does the game actually look when you're playing it? So if you go onto a game that's got minimal kind of creativity, I guess. So if there's no real thought to the design, like it's just a part placed here and a part placed there, there's no thought out color scheme or anything like that. People might like it because that might be the style of the game, but if you're just throwing parts around for the sake of it, you're not going to create something that actually looks good. Like there are games out there on the platform that have been very successful but look really simplistic. There are quite a few games like that, but they've done well because they've still the person the people who have made it have still sat there and thought about, right, what can I do to actually make this look appealing? So you can make a game look almost really bad, but really good at the same time, if you kind of understand what I'm saying. It's it's one of those things where it's like you've got to design the game to fit what the game's about. So like with a theme park, for example, you can't just have like a basic part here, part there sort of grey all round look. You've got to have that high detail, creative, potentially colourful look, because at the end of the day, theme parks are built with kind of different areas to them, so your theme's going to be changing throughout. If you stick to the one theme throughout the entire park, people are going to get very bored of it very quickly. But if you actually make each little bit in itself unique to what it's about, then it looks really, really good. The second kind of thing that I'd say is really what really makes a game stand out is how it functions. So what is your experience as a user, and whether that's like a good or a bad thing? So this kind of comes down to potentially how the story plays out, how it's been programmed, little things like this. So if you've got a game that like let's take a story game for example, you're kind of walking through and a really bad jump scare happens because a really badly designed character just appears in front of you. It might scare you, but it's not going to look impressive. Whereas if it's been programmed to like actually jump out of a hole in the floor and it's all animated, then it's going to look really, really good. And it's going to be those little things where it's like the user's like, wow, that actually looked really good. And that scared me and it looks really good. So that really makes games different. And again, I've played like a story game in the past where I've seen examples of both of these things. So it's like a horror game specifically. I've seen it where you have just blank ragdolls just appear in front of you to try and jump scare you. And while it might work, it doesn't look that impressive because it looks a bit lazy in a sense, because they've just gone program has just gone, right, well, I'm just going to make this appear in front of you rather than say make it burst through a window and like collapse in front of you, if you know what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, definitely. There's many different ways you could do it, and as you said about the jump scares, you can do it in a sort of basic way or an advanced way, and both of those ways may work for different people. It sort of depends on the person, but yeah, it's definitely very good points you've made. So, another question. How do you manage to stay motivated and continue creating games on Roblox? Because one of the many things sort of people say is, oh, I've burnt out from making games or I'm getting bored of making games. But how do you stay motivated on creating them?
I mean, admittedly, I do get very bored of doing stuff sometimes, and I do take breaks from game developing. And I think that's the kind of the way that I deal with it. If I was to sit and go on Roblox Studio every single day of my life and program something, after a week I'd be bored, and I would probably leave the platform for months at that point. So I have to kind of almost pace myself. I have to do a little bit here, a little bit there, do something else, do something completely different. So it might be like for half the day I do a bit of game developing, program something new or build something new. Then I'll go and play a Roblox game, or I'll go and play a completely different game, or I'll do some website development. And I think just having that kind of almost random mix of things to do is what allows me to stay focused with the platform, because if you just stick to one thing solidly, you're going to get bored of it very quickly. So adding that kind of randomness, or not even necessarily random, but just adding different things to do to occupy your time, it really, really helps.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the many things I've had before is, yeah, sort of being burnt out. You want to bring out an update and you've worked on it so much, you just feel so tired from doing it. And people may think, oh, it may just be me, but I guarantee you there's so many people which may feel burnt out. And if you're starting to feel burnt out, I would say just take a small break and sort of play games or do something you enjoy doing and maybe just sort of relax from developing for a couple days or even a couple weeks if you feel like you need to. No one's going to force you to come on it, and at the end of the day, it's sort of as long as you're okay, you feel okay. It's definitely good to try and take a break whenever. So, sort of a mini point adding on to that. Have you ever sort of faced any setbacks or disappointments when working on a Roblox game? For example, you're missing a feature or something you want isn't on there?
Definitely, 100%. Um, there's a game obviously that we're kind of working on at the moment where one of the features, actually there was a feature that got brought out about 2 days after we started making it. And it was really helpful. But had we not had this feature kind of come out, it would have been very difficult for us to make the game. So yeah, it's very, yeah,
Yeah, it was sort of. I think it was the drug detector. Oh, it was
yeah,
something similar
that's the
to
one.
that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it was when it came out, it sort of meant instead of trying a program lifting up a part or moving it around, this new feature that came out sort of completely changed the game for us, and it saved us so many hours. And because of that, our development has gone so much quicker on this upcoming game. So, while learning sort of programming and building, is there anything you've learned on Studio or on Roblox itself which you've been able to use on other platforms, just sort of from the knowledge of Roblox?
Um, Programming wise, I'd say no, because the language that Roblox uses, Lua U, is a very heavily modified version of Lua, and it means you can't really just use that on another thing. Like you've learnt Lua in a sense, but at the end of the day, most games won't use Lua. Probably the main thing that I've taken away from Roblox that I've used in other things is a design aspect. So you create something, let's say a building, a modern building, and you realize, right, well, this shape look, if I do this sort of shape to make it look modern, and I've kind of put these pieces together, and I think those together work, those kind of colors and those sort of looks, it looks really good together. You can take that sort of design element away from the platform and use it on other things. So if you're playing other games that have that creative aspect, you can think, right, well, I want to make something kind of that looks modern, and I know from doing Roblox game development that this sort of shape looks really nice.
Yeah, definitely, because there's sort of many different things you could take from it, and as you mentioned, like the creative part, you can use it pretty much anywhere, even trying to plan out how to use it on sort of like other things you're working on, definitely. So, moving on from that topic, Roblox is sort of known as a platform for younger people, and by younger people, I sort of mean under 18s in a way. But what do you think is one of the biggest advantages of using Roblox as a platform for games development compared to sort of like alternative competitors because of the younger audience?
Um, well, I mean, you kind of got the audience already sorted out for you. So if you're making like a game, say for um, I don't know, let's say under tens, your audience is kind of already there for you. So rather than like if you make a game, a standalone game, you've then got to get it onto a platform where you can kind of advertise it and allow people to buy the game or get the game, however it might be done. And it can be a lot harder to then advertise that. Whereas Roblox, you can kind of publish the game, all of that bit's done for you. You can advertise the game in whatever way you want. You can pay for the game to be advertised. You don't have to, but you can. You can put it out there. You can share it with people really easily because all they have to do is log in and just press play, and it does everything for them. So if you're appealing to that younger audience, it's really good because it means they're not going to have to then try and download that game, and it's also really beneficial from like a platform perspective. So you can publish to PC, mobile, tablet, VR, Xbox, all in one go without having to do kind of anything different. Whereas if you were making like a standalone game, you're going to have to program different things for each platform. So like if you have to program something different for PC than you would for phone, and then that takes up even more time, even more effort, and it makes everything a lot more difficult. So using Roblox is really good because you publish the one version and it works on all the platforms. And like from a young person's perspective, so if you've got like a child that's say 5 years old using Roblox, chances are they're probably going to already have Roblox downloaded on their phone or on their tablet or whatever. And so one of their friends might go, "Oh, I played this game on Roblox recently," and they can say the game's called such and such. That person can then go on to Roblox on their own device and look up your game and just play it with a click of a button. And it's easy. Don't have to install anything new or do anything. Literally just have to press play.
Yeah, definitely. There's sort of many different ways or different ways to advertise your game, even to friends. And I think both of us have done it before. Oh, we've seen a game, we've mentioned it to some of our friends, for example. Oh, I've seen this game, and it sort of spreads it to other people. And it's a good way, which you can't really do on other platforms.
Mm.
So, a similar topic, and the next question for it will be what do you think Roblox's impact has been on like, the gaming industry as a whole? Because I think the most recent stats sort of showed Roblox as one of the biggest gaming platforms ever made.
Yeah, I mean, I don't keep up with gaming. I don't really keep up with news that much, to be honest. So I don't know too many details. But from what I do know, I know recently Roblox it's getting up there in like one of the most used game platforms. It's not quite at the top yet because I know games like Minecraft are up at the very, very top as being like the most downloaded or the most bought games. And I know Roblox is very, very slowly catching up. Um, but from like I said, from what I kind of do know, I know it is starting to make a very big impact, and people are starting to hear about it more and more. You'll get kind of these other developers that build standalone games, and they're like, some of them will be like, "Oh, what's Roblox? I've never heard of that before." And then it's getting to the point more and more now where they're like, "Say, have you ever used Roblox?" And they're like, "Yeah, I mean, I've kind of experimented on around with it, and I've kind of moved away from the standalone game development and I've experimented with Roblox a bit, and that is because it's becoming so much bigger."
Yeah, definitely, because I think when I joined the platform, which is a scary thought almost 9 years ago, it's changed so much. And I remember it sort of being it was a fun game to play, but now it's sort of so many people, pretty much everyone I've spoken to, have heard of the platform. And that topic sort of moves on to our sort of a nice topic and a nice question. So, are there any particular game developers on Roblox or creators that have inspired you to sort of use the platform?
Um, I don't know really, because when I first started using Roblox, it wasn't so much for the developing. I mean, my very very first experience of the platform was you showing me the fireworks, but from that point onwards, I didn't dive too much into the developing side. I did experiment around a little bit here and there, but I realized like there's so many games on here that I can play so easily, and I kind of took almost months um after that, and I was just playing games constantly, like getting a feel for the platform and what it was like. So in terms of like, is there anyone specifically that's inspired me? I'd probably say no, because I haven't really like the thing is you get these people making games, but they don't really share how they've done it or what they've kind of done to make their game or how they've got to that point. So it's very difficult because you can't almost look up to someone. Like you can see they've created this game, but there's no almost backstory to it. You kind of can't put yourself in their shoes and think like, I've created this really good game, um, and like how they've created this really good game. How can I do that myself? Because you're still at the same point that you started at, because you've still got to make everything yourself. because they don't just tell you what they're going to do, and it's fair enough, but it's a very difficult one to say like, oh, such and such has inspired me, because have they really inspired you? Like, unless you know the person or have spoken to the person, it's very difficult to say someone's actually inspired you, especially when they've not like told anyone like what they did for their game, how they came up with it, or they've not like kind of said anything. Because kind of what you'll find is a lot of developers will almost hide in the shadows. Like, they'll make their game and they'll release it, but they won't really do anything other than that. They won't kind of go out there and say, we're showing you kind of our step-by-step process on how to make a game, or we're showing you what gave us the idea to do it. A lot of developers don't do that, and unless you have that kind of side to them, you can't really say they've inspired you.
Yeah, I suppose there's some very valid points in there, and yeah, I suppose you can't sort of pick a set developer. But if you can't sort of pick a developer, would you say you have a sort of favourite game on Roblox? And if so, what sort of makes it stand out compared to all of the other? I think there's like almost a billion games on the platform now.
Um, I mean, I don't have a favorite game. I play lots and lots of different games constantly. Like, my history over the last 30 days is just loads of different things to keep myself entertained. Um, but the same thing that you'll see pretty much throughout all of them is something that I said earlier about what makes a game so good. It's that kind of well thought out design. Like, does the game fit its theme? Does the design fit its theme? Does it have that really good user experience? Is it kind of polished off on the top? Does it look clean when you play it? Does it feel clean when you play it? If you kind of get where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's sort of there's so many games on the platform. I suppose it is very difficult to pick out an exact game. So we've nearly completed all the questions, and I think there's two more left in any questions people may have in the chat. But what do you hope to achieve or create in the future on Roblox?
Um, well, I mean, at the moment, movie world is our kind of biggest thing, and I really want to give that game a real good polish up on the top. Like, I've sat down and thought, like, how can we actually make this game better? And I've come up with a few ideas, but it's actually sitting there and doing that takes so much time that we've not actually been able to do it. So I would love to be able to kind of implement all of these things that we've kind of sat down and thought about into the movie world, or even use them in new games, and start when we start from a scratch, really think, how can we make this the best it can possibly be? How can we almost polish it off now and not have to do it later? And that doing that on movie world and any future games that we make would really make me very happy.
Yeah, definitely. There's sort of many different things, and yeah, it's sort of it's be surprising how the future can definitely come with what we create. So, sort of one of the final questions I'm going to ask you is if you could add any feature on the platform, what feature would you add and sort of why would you add it?
um I mean, there's a lot of things which I would like to have on Roblox, but I think some of the one of the main things would be the ability to simplify parts of it down where possible. So sometimes what you'll find when programming is you want to do something very simple and it actually takes quite a big chunk of code to do it. So things like trying to get like a key press from a keyboard on a computer, it isn't just like one line of code to say like, when this key's pressed, do this. You actually have to sit there and be like, when a key is pressed, check what key that is, and if it is this key, then do this. And I think having some simpler ways to do things like that would be really great, because even like using the key press example, you can't do that when your scripts are on the server, because it makes sense because your server can't listen for all of your kind of clients doing that. But if there was perhaps a simpler way for the server and the client to almost communicate something like that, that would be great. So you could just put something very simple on the client and have that very easily kind of come back across to the server. And that really helps when you're coming down to like anti-exploit stuff and just making the game function better for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sort of Roblox are planning on so many new features in the future. I'm so excited to see what will be coming in literally a couple months even. They've announced so many new things and pretty much every update they've brought out has been really beneficial. Like the new Lua chat which they brought out, they've just added features of being able to add custom images onto like speech bubbles and things, and all of the features have been so perfect and nice. And I'm sort of really excited to see like if we were to redo this event next year, for example, when we can talk about how much has changed, because I expect tons of things will change.
Mm.
So those were all of my questions. If anyone else has any questions left in the chat, feel free to say anything. But if no one else has any questions, I want to thank you for your time, Split Your Gamming, and I hope everyone has a very good day.